Is this a must-win game for the Dolphins in Week 2? Anthony Richardson is a dark horse for MVP. This year's Super Bowl is going to have a team that has never made it there before. Who's going to the playoffs? All of that and more in today's video.
You have to be kidding me. That is impossible. That is absolutely impossible what he just did. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Stopped by Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala to the rim. Oh, great block. James out of nowhere, skies to the rim.
You've got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. You've got a guy that's been borderline unstoppable in this part of the field.
Steps into it, pass is caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
Alright, let's just get right into this shit. Let's see how terrible I could do with my predictions and how much of an ass I look like by the end of the season once I have made a list of all my season-long predictions, probably all of which are going to be terrible. Let's see how I do. Really quick, I do want to touch on instead of breaking videos up and doing 30-minute videos, 20-minute videos, whatever minute videos here and there, I'm going to just start doing an episode on Thursday when it comes to like NFL takes. An episode on Thursday that recaps the previous week and kind of gives a preview and a prediction of the week to come. And then on Saturdays, I'm also going to upload a video of miscellaneous conversation topics of the NFL, throughout time, rankings, whatever you want to say, just random videos of the NFL. So I just wanted to cover that really quick. Today we're going to discuss a lot of things. I'm going to start by give you my top 10 teams going into week 2 in the NFL. I'll also give some honorable mentions. Then I'm going to move on to some year-long superlative predictions. If you don't know what superlatives are, it's like MVP, Player of the Year, all the NFL honors, all predicting the awards for this upcoming season and how I think it's going to turn out. I'm also going to give you my predictions for both conferences, who's winning their divisions this year, who's going to wild card. I'm also going to give you my picks for who's going to be in the NFC and AFC championship games, and we're going to finish it off with a completely predicting the slate of games this week. Last week I went 12-4 on my game picks. Let's see if we can't do better than that going in to week 2 now that we know a little bit more. Hell, I might do a hell of a lot worse. Who knows? But we'll start simply top 10 teams in the NFL. What 10 teams going into week 2 look the strongest according to me, right? I want to give 2 honorable mentions. Team I have at number 12 is the Rams. I think despite the loss to Detroit, I think that they looked really good even though they were banged up. Stafford looked really good. I think this team is going to be able to gel going into this later on in the season, especially once they get healthy, and I think that they're a competitive team at that as well. So I just wanted to talk about the Rams in that regard. Number 11, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am so tempted to put them in the top 10, but I think I want to give it another week or 2 before I really do that. I'm just very impressed with Baker Mayfield. And listen, right now, this whole offseason, we were talking about the Falcons being the team to beat and the team that we saw inevitably winning that division. I think the Bucs are the team to beat right now in the NFC South. We'll see. Let's get into this top 10, though. A lot of you guys are going to disagree with me. A lot of you guys are going to think that this list is ridiculous. I will say that I do think this list is very fluid and debatable, right? We're only 1 week into the season. It's hard to tell exactly where teams are. It won't be for another few weeks before we really start to see some separation and levels to this when it comes to how the teams fare throughout the season. I don't think numbers 1 and 2 are debatable, but we'll get there at the end of that. At number 10, I have the Miami Dolphins. They beat Jacksonville, but I think the better way of saying that, as I kind of spoke about in one of the previous videos, is I think Jacksonville actually found a way to beat themselves. But you can't deny the fact that their offense is explosive and can go off at any time. You got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. I mean, the speed on that offense is incredible. I might not be the biggest Tua guy, but I do believe that he's a good quarterback. He kind of reminds me of almost like a poor man's Drew Brees. He doesn't have the arm talent that you would want with a team that's got deep threats the way that they do. But we can't deny that Miami is going to be a competitive team this season. At number 9, I got the Chargers. I like Harbaugh. I like Herbert. I like what I saw against the Raiders. At no point did they feel like they weren't in control of that game. They ran the ball well. J.K. Dobbins hopefully can stay healthy for once in his career. I like the Chargers, man. I think this identity and this culture change is going to be good for them, and I do think that they're going to be very competitive, especially as they start to gel more throughout the season and Harbaugh starts to instill a little bit more fear in the hearts of the players on that team. I got the Chargers at number 9. At number 8, and some people might think this is low, but I think this is fair, I got Buffalo. The defense looked very bad against Arizona. I want to give respect to Kyler Murray, as I did in one of my previous videos, saying that he was somebody that impressed me this week. But Josh Allen was very impressive, and I don't see this offense taking much of a step back. And even though Arizona's defense might not be this world-beating defense by any means that we would speak of certain other teams like some that I'll get to, that offense doesn't look like it's taking a step back. They said goodbye to Gabe Davis. They let Stephon Diggs go. But Keon Coleman, especially once he starts to develop more, I think he's a dog. And I really do think that there's enough players on that team to help this offense gel. And Josh Allen balled out. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that develops as the season goes. At number 7, and some people have them significantly higher, so I don't feel so bad putting them at 7. I'm going with Philadelphia. The defense looks bad. It finished horribly last season and doesn't look any better to start this season. Again, just week 1, so we'll see. But they don't look good. The defense doesn't look good at all. But the offense, despite Jalen Hurts struggling a bit, you just can't deny it, man. You got Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. I mean, we can list guys further down the depth chart that would probably be higher on depth charts throughout the league. But this offense is built to score points, man. That's just what it is. Their offensive line might not be quite what it was last year with Jason Kelce not being there. The tush push might not be as dangerous or as much of a guarantee anymore. But at the end of the day, that's probably a good thing because now we're going to see some more competitive, more mindful football out of them, possibly, unless their center just decides to just learn how to do the tush push as well as Jason Kelce did, but we'll see. I got them at 7 because I'm definitely worried about that defense. But you just can't deny the offensive skill. You simply can't. At number 6, just edging them out within their own division, I got Dallas. I was impressed with their week 1 game against Cleveland. We'll see what Cleveland is as the year progresses, but I still think that the way their defense played is enough to give them credit because as much as some people might think that Philly's the team to beat in that division, at the moment I give it to Dallas because their defense is legit and their offense can still score points. And I don't think anybody's going to look at you and say that they think that the Eagles defense is even in the same league as the Cowboys because it's not. Micah Parsons is definitely a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year going out throughout this season. And Dak Prescott just got paid. There's no more looming clouds of who's going to get paid, going into next offseason if Dak's going to be there, if he isn't. We know for a fact he is now. That offense got paid. The guys are ready to go. CeeDee Lamb is healthy. Dak's presumably healthy. They look like they're ready to put this thing together. Now we're going to break into the top 5, and I do think that these 5 teams I feel really solid about. Starting with number 5, despite the loss, they were competitive until the very last second of the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar missed a throw, completely missed a throw. Isaiah Likely's toe was out of bounds. This was a close game. and a competitive game. And there was no doubt about it. The fact that they were able to play as well as they did against Kansas City, despite the last-ditch efforts not making it, they could have an argument to be a top 2-3 team in the league. I have them at 5 because we have to see how they bounce back from this loss. Because let's be honest, Baltimore's Achilles heel has been Kansas City, specifically Lamar Jackson. And if they can prove that they're still the team that they've been against every other team until come playoff time, then they're obviously going to be one of the best teams in football. At number 4, I'm starting to think maybe I'm overrating this team a tad, but part of me also feels like people are underrating this team a tad, and that's the Houston Texans. Their defense did not look great against Anthony Richardson and the Colts, but Anthony Richardson only completed 9 passes. Granted, those 9 passes were incredible, and he looked very good despite only completing 9 passes. But Houston, for the most part, defensively were making enough plays to where if somebody wasn't an absolute freakish athlete at the quarterback position, they probably would have held him to significantly less points. But the offense especially looked great. And listen, C.J. Stroud, I think most people will probably say that they believe in C.J. Stroud. How could you not? The kid looks incredibly special. Joe Mixon balled out. Some people thought that move was overrated. I thought it was a little underrated. I think Joe Mixon was an upgrade at running back for sure for them. Obviously, Stephon Diggs had 2 touchdowns. I mean, Nico Collins had a crazy catch. Tank Dell got involved. This offense looks like it's already gelled and ready to go, and I'm really impressed and excited to see what we're going to get out of Houston. At number 3, I got Detroit. I feel really, really strongly about the top 3 teams, obviously Detroit being one of them. They did not play a great game against the Los Angeles Rams. However, they played a complete game. They played 60 minutes plus overtime and were able to pull out the win. And for the first time probably ever, we have to say that the Detroit Lions look like a well-coached, experienced football team that situationally is checking all the fundamental boxes, and they just look like a team that's been there, done that, and has pedigree for some reason. When they play against a very good team in the Rams, and albeit a close game, kind of always felt like they had control, and you got to give it to them. And I think that that's a serious tip of the cap to the coaching staff and really the complete culture change that has been experienced in Detroit. They're a force to be reckoned with. Jared Goff was playing well. Jameson Williams probably had his first real breakout game. They got a 2-headed monster at running back between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, their receiving core is good. Obviously, Sam Laporta is good. Aiden Hutchinson is an absolute freak. I mean, they just got playmakers. Alex Anzalone is really just a ball hawk. I mean, maybe not from an interceptions perspective, but he's all over that field, and it seems like he's always making a play. You got to give these guys credit. Detroit at number 3. At number 2, I got San Francisco. I'm pretty sure I'm on record saying I think that they're going to take a step back this year. And although it's still week 1 and too early to tell, I'm already starting to feel like maybe I was wrong about that because this team is just complete. Listen, the development of Christian McCaffrey's Achilles tendonitis and him being, I think, considered week to week, we don't know what to expect there. We don't know if he's going to be back next week, 4 weeks, at all. Who knows? What I do know is even if he's not there, as much as that's a blow and that hurts, they plugged Jordan Mason in and he just looked like Christian McCaffrey, didn't he? I'm not saying he's going to fill that void and fill the shoes of Christian McCaffrey, but he looked damn good and capable, and this whole team is just complete from top to bottom. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They have, when healthy, obviously I just said he's not, but one of, if not the best running back in the league. They got one of the best receiving cores, one of the best tight ends, one of the best defensive fronts. I mean, this team is incredible. This team is built to beat absolutely anybody in the league, and they manhandled the Jets for the most part. And again, we'll see what happens with the Jets, but San Francisco looks dangerous. Point blank, period. So I got them at number 2, and I don't think it's debatable. I think that they are solidly the number 2 team in the NFL, which leaves us to the most obvious ranking, and that's Kansas City at number 1. 2-time defending champs, beat a great team in Baltimore. Patrick Mahomes looked good. The offense looks explosive, which is something that you couldn't say last year, and they still won the Super Bowl. They're looking to three-peat for the first time in NFL history. And I got to say, they got to be the betting favorite right now because the defense still looks good. Played well against Lamar Jackson. They had their moments, obviously. Lamar was able to run around a good bit. But Kansas City, right now, until proven otherwise, they got to be the alpha dog. They just have to be. They got to be the number 1 team in the league. Patrick Mahomes is the number 1 quarterback in the league. That's my top 10. Miami. The Chargers, the Bills, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Texans, the Lions, the Niners, the Chiefs. That's my top 10 going into week 2. And we'll be updating that list every single week on Thursdays, as long as I'm able to get to it. I mean, I'm a busy guy, so we'll see. Getting into seltzer, by the way. Never been much of a seltzer guy. Recently have had a weight loss journey, and seltzer's become a good friend of mine. It's pretty fucking good. I don't know why I didn't like it. Okay. Now I'm going to start to make a little bit of an ass of myself, probably, because we're going to be picking the NFL superlatives after week 1, and I wanted to get this in before week 1 at all, before the regular season started, but I didn't have a whole lot of time. There was other content I wanted to make beforehand for you guys, so I'm getting it in now, so I apologize for this being a week late, but we're doing it. So I touched, for those of you that don't understand what NFL superlatives are, the NFL Honors Award Ceremony gives out yearly trophies. Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, MVP, etc. Today, I'm going to give you my top 3 candidates for each individual award, and I'm going to pick the player that I think is going to win it this year. And I will preface this whole thing by saying I tried not to go super obvious, right? I tried not to go super obvious. I think it's just a little boring to go with all of the favorites. With that being said, not all of my picks are these wild. The people that I'm choosing have a good chance of winning it, just might not be the number 1 betting favorite, right? So let's just dive in. We'll go kind of bottom to top. We'll finish with MVP. We're going to start with the Comeback Player of the Year award. I got three names on this list. I'll start with Anthony Richardson. If you guys don't kind of have an idea of how I feel about Anthony Richardson now, you will very soon. I think that he's an incredible athlete, and if he stays healthy, he's going to just look freakish at times. And really the only question mark for me is going to be whether or not he can evolve as a passer, even though he can make all the passers, but as a reader of defenses, as a pre-snap guy, as more of the intellectual side of being a quarterback, the timing, really getting down the X's and O's, because his athleticism is out of this world, his arm is out of this world, and his capability is absolutely out of this world. Another person that I think we have to consider for Comeback Play of the Year, simply just because they are who they are, is Joe Burrow. He's coming off of injury, obviously, from last season, and as long as he stays healthy, you got to consider him a candidate, because Joe Burrow, as I explained, even though week 1 was a bad week 1 for him, I had him as my second best quarterback in the league, and with that being the standard, him coming off of injury, returning to playing a full season of football, you have to think he's got to be on that list for sure. Then the final of the 3 players that I have considered for comeback player of the year is Kyler Murray. He already is off to a good start to the season. Obviously, I said how impressed I was by him in week 1, as I did Anthony Richardson. It's kind of interesting how Anthony Richardson and Kyler Murray were both very impressive to me in week 1, and I was very disappointed in Joe Burrow. Ultimately, for Comeback Player of the Year, my pick is Kyler Murray. I just have this feeling like, although I don't know about playoffs, I just see him absolutely balling, putting up great stats, and just looking like the future is bright in Arizona. And there have been times where they've thought about moving on from Kyler, and I think that those questions and those what's the word I'm looking for? Those precautious thoughts, I think they're going to go away. I really do, because I really think that we're going to look at Kyler, again, assuming he's able to stay healthy, and say this kid is as good as advertised a couple years ago when he was an MVP candidate for a majority of that season. Moving on, I'll speak on the Rookie of the Year. I'll start with Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm going to kind of go quickly. Dallas Turner was probably the most hyped rookie in the class. So I think just by virtue of how talented and how high they were picked, you got to put Dallas Turner in there. But there are actually two other players that I think are a little bit more, higher ceiling in their rookie year as far as what I expect to see from them. And two players that come to mind. One is Laiatu Latu. I think the position that he's in, and I just want to check one thing just to make sure that I'm saying this appropriately. I think that the position that he is in on the team that he plays for, the Colts, is a situation where he can have the opportunity to make plays, which he's known to. He can be in a position to make plays for a team that's fighting for a playoff spot all year long. And if he has an opportunity on a national stage to make some plays when there's playoff implications, he's going to get a lot of looks for sure for the Defensive Rookie of the Year. But the player that I actually would put my money on over every other player defensively, even though there's a lot of nice defensive rookies this year, is Jared Verse with the Rams. There's an obvious hole to fill that will never be filled in Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive players of all time. Some people think he is the best. I'm not that person. I don't think he's the best. I think he's one of the best defensive linemen of all time. But Jared Verse, I think, has massive shoes to fill. But I don't think the expectations are for him to do so, which I think gives him the opportunity to really just ball out for Sean McVay in that defense. And although without much to go off of it, I'm going to take Jared Verse to be my Defensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think most of us have a few of the same players on this list. I'll start with Jaden Daniels. I think week 1 wasn't the best start for him, but it could have been a lot worse as well. And he has nothing but athletic ability and a good arm on him as well. If he's able to stay healthy and able to develop, I think there's a really strong possibility that he's going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate, or at least finish in the top 3 like I have him. The rushing yards, the playmaking ability, the lower expectations from a team perspective will kind of also help him if he's able to really exceed any of those expectations. So I have him on that list as well. The second one, and possibly the most obvious one, is Caleb Williams. His performance in week 1 was obviously not great. I don't think it was as horrible as some people want to claim it was. But it was obviously not great. He didn't come out swinging for the fences like some quarterbacks have. However, I really just don't see a situation where he doesn't continue to get better. I just don't. He didn't make any mistakes. Maybe he had a couple errant throws, but he didn't make any real mistakes. The problem in week 1 was rhythm, timing, the speed of the game, the flow of the offense, and just everything kind of gelling with a bunch of new players and a new system. I think that was the problem. I don't think Caleb Williams himself was the problem, because he wasn't the only person out of sync. It was really the whole offense for a while there. And I do think there's just no way he does not continue to get confident in the pocket, out of the pocket, making throws within the offense. I like Caleb Williams. But I have an interesting one that I'm actually going to pick for Rookie of the Year. Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but if I look at the team, the fit, the national exposure, and the week 1 performance, I'm going to go Xavier Worthy. He was, without a doubt, a great fit for Kansas City. Everybody thought that when he was drafted. They lacked speed. They lacked a receiving core that can get open down the field and open up this offense like it once was when Tyreek Hill was there. And Xavier Worthy's week 1 performance, I think, is just a sign of what's to come. And if he can continue that type of performance, being a Swiss Army knife and a deep threat and just a completely explosive playmaker on an offense led by Patrick Mahomes, the amount of eyes that's going to be on this kid alone is going to be enough to get him a lot more votes. I'm going to go Xavier Worthy for my Offensive Rookie of the Year. We'll go to Coach of the Year. And I thought of many. I think that there were many head coaches in the league that I think are primed for a potential Coach of the Year season. I obviously went with 3 to talk about, and I'll start with Dan Campbell of the Lions. Dan Campbell, for me, I have the same feeling about him as I do the person that I ended up choosing. It was really just a coin flip. Dan Campbell and this other coach that I'll get to. The Lions look well coached in week 1. They're coming off a season where they made it to the NFC Championship game, which is as far as they've ever gone. I think they're primed for a deep playoff run. They look experienced. They look passionate, motivated, disciplined. I think that they're going to win the division. I think that they're going to win several games. I got to say, at least 11 to 12 games, right? Dan Campbell, I think, will get many votes for Coach of the Year this season. Another one that I wanted to throw in there, because a lot of time when there's a new head coach that takes a team that was struggling to the playoffs or a very good record, they have a tendency, for instance, Brian Daboll. He did that recently, a really poor team in the Giants, and was able to take it into the playoffs in his first year with the team. I got Jim Harbaugh here because I do think the Chargers are one of those teams that can make the playoffs, and Jim Harbaugh already has one of the biggest names out of any head coach in the league. He's a culture changer and setter. He might not be your X's and O's guy, but he's going to have the team ready to play, and they're going to want to play hard. They're going to have an identity. The Chargers are going to have an identity. They're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to get better on defense. Justin Herbert is a very capable future megastar at quarterback. I still think he's a star at quarterback. Some people think he's overrated. I just don't. And I think Jim Harbaugh is absolutely a dark horse candidate to win Coach of the Year in his first year with the Chargers, because there's a very good chance that he's going to take this team from one of the worst in football last year to one of the better teams in the league. Then the coach that I ended up choosing is DeMeco Ryans of the Houston Texans. If it's not clear by now that I'm high on the Texans, it's got to be. DeMeco Ryans is a former player. He's a player's coach. His first year with the Texans, they looked fantastic. Obviously, C.J. Stroud plays a gigantic role in how successful this team has been so fast. But DeMeco Ryans does absolutely as well. And I think that they're going to be a top 4 team in the league at the end of it. I think that they're primed for a very deep playoff run as well. And if you want to take Dan Campbell, I wouldn't be mad at you. I'm going to take DeMeco Ryans in a coin flip for the Coach of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year. Now, I gotta say, even though I'm not picking this player because of the fact that I just feel like it's too obviously boring, even though this player probably will win it. I don't want to pick them because of how obvious it kind of is. TJ Watt. There are a lot of people at this point that have kind of gotten to the conclusion that that Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the league now that Aaron Donald has retired. I think Myles Garrett is absolutely a top 2 to 3 defensive player in the league. There's no arguing that. But when it comes to who's the best, it's TJ Watt. In a league with no Aaron Donald, I think TJ Watt is the number 1 defensive player in the league. He's just a complete game wrecker. Did you see him against Atlanta in week 1? It's not like that's the first time he's done it. It's not like it's going to be the last time this season alone he's going to do it. He's going to have a game like that. And he could have had an even better game if it wasn't for some bogus calls that called back, maybe not bogus, some questionable calls that called back 2 forced fumbles and 2 would-be fumble recoveries. TJ Watt's an absolute game wrecker and is probably the favorite, rightfully so, to win the Defensive Player of the Year. Another guy that's an obvious candidate to be Defensive Player of the Year, somebody that's kind of been a pick for Defensive Player of the Year, but just has not had a complete enough season so far to do it, is Micah Parsons. He was a game wrecker in week 1. He has a tendency to start the season, and really the whole first half of the season, absolutely go crazy and ball out. And I think that's what we're going to see. The question is whether or not he's been able to sustain that same level of play throughout the remainder of the season and have just a complete and total dominant season from start to finish. If he can do that, he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Before I go into my pick, which is a little bit of a stretch, I do want to do one honorable mention. I know I said I was only going to talk about 3 players per category, but I do want to give one honorable mention. I kind of talked about Myles Garrett. He's not my honorable mention, but obviously he's someone to look at. Max Crosby is starting to really get the respect he deserves, yet still not enough. He's also an absolute game wrecker. If you watch the Raiders game, every time the Raiders defense is on the field, 3 times out of 5 plays, Max Crosby's making some sort of a play that disrupts the plays completely, has a massive impact on them or whatever. So I do think Max Crosby is someone I want to just at least touch on. But my pick, because I think it's fun, and because I think this team is going to be great this year, Aiden Hutchinson. Why not? Why not take the Michigan kid to be the Defensive Player of the Year? His ceiling is clearly through the roof, right? Last year we saw nothing but potential greatness, and he was already really great last year. I think he's going to make an even bigger, even better leap this year and turn into really the Nick Bosa of the NFC North. He, to me, is a very similar player to Nick Bosa, and Nick Bosa is obviously a Defensive Player of the Year in his own right. I'm taking Aiden Hutchinson because I think he's going to have such a big impact on such a successful team this year. 2 more. Offensive Player of the Year. People aren't going to like this one. Here are my top 3. We'll start with the one that I have at 3rd, and that's CeeDee Lamb. He just got paid. He's obviously a phenomenal receiver. Some people think he might be the best receiver in football. I don't. I think he's more top 4. Maybe he is at 4 or 3 or something along those lines. He's a phenomenal receiver. There's no doubt. And the offensive situation that he's in Dallas, he's the face of it. And he's going to get the most touches of his career. He's probably going to outdo himself, again, barring injury. And this whole list and all these predictions are all barring injury. He's going to get the most targets in his career this year. He's going to get the most touches in his career this year. He might get more yards. He might even have more touchdowns than he did last year. If that's the case, he's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. The reason why I didn't pick him is because there's 2 other guys I'm looking at that I'm just like, damn. I really like him this year. One is Tyreek Hill. How can you not at least consider him to be Offensive Player of the Year? I mean, he's going to be looked at as a guy that could potentially hit 2,000 yards every year. I mean, he's going to have a bomb every game that he catches deep downfield. He's obviously a fantasy football hack. He's a cheat code, both on the field and in fantasy football. I mean, this guy's an absolute phenom. We don't even have to explain why Tyreek Hill is a potential Offensive Player of the Year. He just is, and he always will be. but I have him at 2. And this is where I'm going to get a lot of shit, and I'm probably going to make myself look like an ass, and people are going to say that there's bias. My offensive player of the year is going to be Saquon Barkley. As a Giants fan, it would only make sense for us to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year to where we can't afford to keep Saquon. He leaves for the division rival Philadelphia Eagles and has the best season of his career and wins Offensive Player of the Year. It just makes too much sense. If week 1 was a preview of what's to come from him this season, then it's already a lock, man. It's already a lock. If he's going to have games like that all year long, it's crazy, man. He might have 2,500 yards from scrimmage this year, 15 plus touchdowns. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I clearly love Saquon Barkley as a player. I think he's the most talented player in the league when fully healthy, outside of possibly Christian McCaffrey. Running back, not player, running back. And I just think he's a perfect fit for that offense. An offense that does like to run the ball to help Jalen Hurts and open up the rest of the field. And he's also great out of the backfield. He can catch passes. He did catch a touchdown last week against Green Bay in Brazil. I have him as my offensive player of the year for 2024. Finally, MVP. The clear and obvious person to speak of in this situation is Patrick Mahomes. He will always and forever be, going into each and every year, a top 2 to 3 MVP candidate. In a lot of cases, he's going to be the betting favorite. I don't know if he is the betting favorite or not this year. You got to at least bring his name up. I want to bring up a dark horse. It is an absolute stretch, and I do not think this player is going to win MVP. However, if this player can develop fast, there's a real chance for it. Anthony Richardson. What we saw from Anthony Richardson in week 1 is a freak athlete with an explosive arm, explosive athleticism, a guy that you simply cannot defend. If he can put it together from a scheme and playbook perspective and a mental perspective and all that kind of stuff, if he can put it together and develop more from just pure, raw, freakish talent, he's going to be a phenom. He's going to be an absolute phenom. So I do think we're a year too early. I think I might be a year too early in my prediction of him being an MVP candidate. But I had to say it because I see greatness. Not just flashes of greatness. I mean, it's not just like a flash. That was a really good play. No, it's like a holy shit. How the fuck did he do that? That's what we see from Anthony Richardson. You're like, you just don't see this type of shit. I mean, he's going like that. And it's 65, 70 yards in the air, dime, right on the fucking money. You just don't see that very often. When you see that, it usually comes from a guy like Mahomes or my next MVP candidate, Josh Allen. Week 1 was incredible. I think if you did this type of situation where you say, okay, well, so from only week 1, who's the MVP? I think you got Josh Allen number 1. Josh Allen 1, probably Baker Mayfield 2 after week 1 because they balled out. Josh Allen, he's going to have to wear a cape most of this season. He's going to have to elevate young talent at the receiver position throughout this season as well. We know who Josh Allen is. When the playoffs come, and if he doesn't have to play Mahomes at least, he could go deep in the playoffs too. But there's no doubt to me that he's going to have a very good regular season and be in the candidacy for the MVP, but I like to have fun. And maybe this pick is not the sexiest pick or the most bold pick you could make. I'm going CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is going to help the Texans reach a level of success that they haven't before. And I believe heavily in CJ Stroud. He was an MVP candidate last year throughout a large portion of it. And hell, I think until he got injured, what was that, a halfway or 3/4 of the way through the season? If the season ended then, I probably would have voted for him. I probably would have said he was the MVP at that point. I think if he stays healthy, and these weapons obviously look fantastic, and the Texans are able to keep winning games, win that division, possibly go deep in the playoffs, I think CJ Stroud's their MVP this year. That's just the way I feel. Okay. We did our superlatives. We talked about our yearly awards. This has already gone on long. And I'm not trying to take forever on this because I still have to do 2 more things that are each going to take a little bit of time. So I'm going to kind of, maybe not speed this up or rush it, but I'm going to kind of give you an efficient breakdown of my next 2 segments. This one is going to be my playoff predictions. What teams I see going to the playoffs, winning their division. Then I'm going to give you the conference championship participants and the Super Bowl participants and my Super Bowl winner. In the NFC, and I have this in seed order, 49ers at the 1 seed winning the NFC West. I said they were going to take a step back, I know. We'll get to that. The Lions at the 2 seed winning the NFC North. The Cowboys at the 3 seed winning the NFC East. First time that division's had a back-to-back winner in some time. Falcons at the 4 seed. I kind of want to change that. Fuck it, I'm changing it. Bucks at the 4 seed. I'm just gonna write that down so I can hold myself accountable because I don't want it to be the other way around. Bucks at the 4 seed. I'm changing it up. I know it was only week 1 and I probably shouldn't let that affect my pick that much. And it's kind of cheating, but I'm doing it. Bucks winning the NFC South 2 years in a row. Or maybe it's been longer, actually. Maybe it's been like 4 or 5 years in a row, depending on how long it was for Brady. But anyway, Bucks at the 4 seed. At the 5 seed, Rams. I think once they get healthy, they're just going to ball. I told you that I'm a fan of them this season. They opened up against the Lions, which is a tough out for any team in the league this year, I'm telling you. They're in a division with the Niners. The Seahawks aren't a terrible team. The Cardinals are going to play spoiler, so it's not going to be easy for them to get there. But they're going to get there, in my opinion. Going with the Rams. Wow, now I'm looking at it. I don't have a whole lot of new teams this year from last year, but fuck it. Number 6, I got the Chicago Bears. I'll let that marinate for a moment because I know a lot of people aren't going to like it. Moment of silence for the Chicago. Well, not a moment of silence. Go ahead. Type your comments. Tell me how stupid that is. Go ahead. Chicago Bears as the 6th seed making it to the playoffs. Why? I want to preface this statement by I had this predicted before the Jordan Love injury. So I got the Bears in the playoffs because I thought that I think that Caleb Williams is going to be very good. The defense is very good. The special teams is very good. They are coached relatively well. The only question mark is the offense. And I think it's only a matter of time before they start to gel. And with that being said, they have a softer first half, a little more than half of the season. They don't really play a divisional opponent till like week 11 or something like that. I think they're going to win a lot of games to start the year. I really do. I think they're going to be competitive. Bears at the 6. At the 7, I got the Eagles. Can't have the offensive player of the year in Saquon Barkley, an explosive offense, and not at least make it to the playoffs. I think their defense is going to be their detriment this year for sure. But I do have them as the 7 seed making it to the playoffs. In the AFC, at the 1 seed, I did this. This is 1. This is 1, by the way. At the 1 seed, what's up, brother, is the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they didn't get the 1 seed last year. They're due for it again. Kansas City at the 1, Houston at the 2, Baltimore at the 3, Buffalo at the 4, the Chargers at the 5, wild carding, the Dolphins at the 6, the Bengals at the 7. Let me tell you something really quickly. Now that we have my rankings for playoff teams in the AFC and the NFC, this is one of the toughest years of football from a prediction standpoint. I'm getting it at the worst time. I'm posting my predictions at the worst time to start doing it because this season is a complete crapshoot. The top end is really strong, right? The top end of the league. But after that, once you get into that second tier of teams, it's a big blend. And there are a ton of teams I didn't mention that could very well make the playoffs. Hell, I think the Colts are a dark horse playoff team. I think the Jags are a potential playoff team. Who else? I think the Jets, depending on if they can get better, are a potential playoff team. As far as the AFC, I think in the NFC, I said the Falcons were going to make it, but they definitely have the potential to be in the playoffs, depending on how that division plays out. I really don't think we can count out the Packers, even though Jordan Love's going to miss time. I think they're a potential playoff team as well. There's plenty of talent in the league. There are plenty of really good competitive teams in the league, and this is going to be a really hard year to figure out. Let's get into the conference championship games. I'm really wanting to have some fun in the NFL. In the AFC, at Arrowhead, the Chiefs will host the Houston Texans. That, I believe, will be your AFC championship game. You guys know I'm high on the Texans. You guys know I'm high on the Chiefs. I'm sticking to my guns here. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I think he's going to host the MVP and CJ Stroud in the AFC championship game. In the NFC championship game, I got the Lions in Detroit. That's right, in Detroit. That means that the Niners are not in this game as the 1 seed. I think they're going to end up getting bounced. How are they going to get bounced? By the only team I should not bet on in the playoffs, the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, man, I don't know why. I did this last year. My entire life, the Cowboys have been horrible in the playoffs, which I love. I fucking love it. Last year, I thought the Cowboys were going to make it to the conference championship game. And I was wrong. They got walked by the Packers. I don't give a shit what the score was. They got walked. And I have no reason to believe that their fortune is just going to change this season because the Niners are definitely going to beat them. But I'm going to have fun with it. Even though I know it's wrong, I'm going to say the Cowboys. Because on the off chance that I'm right, the fact that I'm not a Cowboys fan, because every Cowboys fan thinks they're winning the Super Bowl, but the fact that I'm not a Cowboys fan, in fact, I hate them. They're my least favorite team in the league. Me predicting them to get it to as far as the NFC Championship game, hell, I mean, that's kind of bold. Lions hosting the Cowboys, Chiefs hosting the Texans. So who goes to the Super Bowl? Who wins those games? I'm going with the home teams. I have the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl to win potentially their 3rd Super Bowl in a row, first time in NFL history, and then I have the Lions making it to the Super Bowl for the first time in the history of their franchise. Again, I don't want to take too long on this, but I want to rewind time a little bit. I think it was 2019. The Rams and the Chiefs. I think it was Monday Night Football. It was that game that ended in like 56-55 or something like that. One of the most incredibly explosive and entertaining games that we'd ever seen. That was Jared Goff versus Patrick Mahomes. That's my Super Bowl for this year. Now, I don't think that it's going to be 50-plus points on either side. But I think that would be a very entertaining, fun Super Bowl. And I think the whole entire world, if you're not a Kansas City Chiefs fan, is going to be rooting for the Lions there. However, I think the Chiefs will win. I think the Chiefs are going to three-peat. I think they're going to beat the Lions in a competitive game that the Lions are going to make it again. Yet another step forward. I'm going with the Chiefs over the Lions in the Super Bowl. All right, that's on the internet. I can't take it back. Even though I might want to several times throughout the season. And now that I put that on there, none of these teams are going to make it to the playoffs. I'm going to look like a complete jackass. Those are my predictions for this upcoming season. Now, let's get into Week 2. Week 2 starts today. By the time this uploads, today is the start of Week 2. And it is Thursday night football. Dolphins, Bills. I'm going to pull up my predictions because I got them logged into this tracker that helps me keep track of myself throughout the season. So, Thursday night football is the Buffalo Bills at Miami. This is a must-win game for Miami. Listen, it's Week 2, right? I don't care. Miami has had their Achilles heel in Buffalo. I think that it's important for them to win this game because they haven't been able to beat that team. And I think psychologically, if they can't do it, they won't think they can. But I don't think they will. I'm going to go with the Bills. I'm going to go with the Bills over the Dolphins in Miami on Thursday night football. Sunday, 1 o'clock games. I believe these are the 1 o'clock games. Baltimore hosts the Raiders. Baltimore's got to bounce back. They have to. And I also think that they're going to. They're a significantly better team all the way around. Well-coached. Lamar Jackson. I mean, come on. I don't think many people would pick it the other way. It would be an absolute shot to the heart if Baltimore loses that game. I'm going to go with Baltimore for a 1-1 start. Buffalo Bills with a 2-0 start in this case. The Panthers hosting the Chargers. Listen, in a world where the Panthers don't exist, the Giants would be the worst team in football, but the Panthers do exist, so they're the worst team in football. I'm going to go with the Chargers. Regardless of every team in the NFL is significantly better than the Panthers, except for really the Giants. So, listen, you might not see me pick the Panthers in a single game this year. I think that they might go 0-17. Who the fuck? We'll see. Going with the Chargers. I mean, are we really even going to talk about that much? Dallas versus New Orleans. Clearly, I just went off saying that I have confidence in the Cowboys for some odd reason. But at the very least, in the regular season, they have typically been a very good team, especially in recent years. They do also have a tendency of starting off very strong. New Orleans obviously beat the absolute fucking brakes off of the Panthers, but I don't think that's going to matter here because this is just like you beat up a high school junior varsity team and now you're playing an NFL team that I think can make it all the way to the conference championship game. I'm going to go with Dallas. Here's actually one of the most fun games of the week for me, and I'm definitely going to be tuning into this game. The Detroit Lions hosting the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, obviously I just switched up my picks and I said that I think the Buccaneers. Actually, I gotta go back here and fix something because I chose that game wrong. I, for some reason, thought Washington was gonna beat the Buccaneers, but they didn't. Okay. The Buccaneers in Detroit, I think is gonna be a fun game. I think these teams met in the playoffs last year, and it was a really competitive game as well. So this is kind of a grudge match in a way, especially for the Buccaneers wanting to get their revenge. I think this is going to be a really good game. I genuinely do. I think I'm a little higher on the Bucs than some people are. But I like Baker Mayfield and I like the Bucs. And if you look at the team, there's really not a whole lot of massive holes in this team. With that being said, the Detroit Lions, I think, are one of the best teams in the league. So I'm going to take Jared Goff and the Lions at home. Colts at the Packers. If Jordan Love wasn't injured, I'd be taking the Packers in Lambeau. But because he is, and I just don't have any reason to believe that Malik Willis is going to be able to elevate that offense a whole hell of a lot, I'm going to take the Colts because I think Anthony Richardson's incredible. And this is another opportunity for the defense to grow, as well as Anthony Richardson to develop. I'm going to go with him and the Colts. The Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns. Two teams that, man, I know that they both really need this. The Jaguars shot themselves in the foot last week, and the Cleveland Browns, you got to probably put that whole organization on suicide watch, man. Like, what they're paying Deshaun Watson, fully guaranteed, and he went from one of the best quarterbacks in football, and then as soon as he changed his uniform, he went to being one of the worst quarterbacks in football after all the horrible allegations. I'm I'm going to take Jacksonville just because I think that the feeling in Cleveland's got to be horrible right now. I mean, that morale has got to be on an all fucking time low. I'll take Jaguars in a bounce back game. I think that the mistakes that were made in Jacksonville are correctable, and I think that they will correct them, especially against a team that I don't think very highly of at this point in the Browns, although their defense is good, so who knows. San Francisco 49ers going into Minnesota. I shit on Sam Darnold when I did my quarterback rankings video, and he went out against the Giants and made me eat my fucking words. I mean, his completion percentage was what, 99.9 at this point? I mean, the guy played great. The fucking Vikings absolutely beat the shit out of the Giants. But it's the Giants. Does anybody think that they're any good? I don't. I'm taking San Francisco to fuck them up and bring Sam Darnold, who, by the way, former San Francisco 49er Sam Darnold, they're going to get fucked. Even if it's competitive, the Niners are going to win this game. If they don't, I will do the fucking, I don't know, ALS Ice Bucket Challenge or some shit. Who the fuck knows? Something ridiculous that's going to make me uncomfortable or embarrass me. I'm taking the Niners. Seattle going into New England. New England beating Cincinnati, I think, actually is more of a bad look for Cincinnati than it is a good look for New England. I still don't think highly of New England at all. I'm not huge on Seattle either, but I'm just so low on the Patriots. Regardless of their Week 1 win, I'm going to go Seattle, even though I'm not a Geno Smith guy. New York Jets at the Tennessee Titans. Can we all agree that Mayo Man looked horrible through the most ridiculous pick that we've seen in some time? I know I gave a lot of credit to Chicago's defense for making that play, which they deserve, but we also got to realize that Will Levis looked like shit. I mean, he looked like shit. Mayo Man he ain't looking good. Then again, Aaron Rodgers didn't look a whole hell of a lot better, and really the Jets as a whole didn't. But they're going to bounce back in this game. I'm going to take the Jets to win in Tennessee. If they lose to Tennessee, fuck, Aaron Rodgers might retire anyway. Who knows? New York Giants at Washington. I took Washington to beat the Buccaneers, so even though they lost to the Buccaneers, why the fuck would I take them? Why would I not take them to beat the Giants? The Giants are like the Patriots, the Giants, and the Panthers. You might not see me pick them at all year long. I don't think either the Patriots or the Giants will go 0-17, but they ain't going to be much better. So I don't think I'm going to pick them at all this year. Going with Washington. Rams, Cardinals. I said the Cardinals could play spoiler. I said that they're going to be a competitive team. This is a divisional matchup, so you know that they're going to play each other hard. But I think that the Cardinals are going to be competitive and play well in this game, but I think they're going to have a similar type of fate as they did in Buffalo, where they compete all the way to the end, but lose in heartbreaking fashion to a team that overall is just simply better than they are at the moment. And I'm going to take the Rams to bounce back after their Week 1 loss against the Lions. Next is Cincinnati at Kansas City. Boy, Cincinnati just can't catch a fucking break in the beginning of the NFL season, can they? Because, listen, they should have fucking won last week. That's on them. They shot themselves in the foot all game long. I mean, they just couldn't buy a first down. They couldn't buy points. They just kept fucking themselves against a bad team. Now they're going to the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't care. Burrow had my ass in this situation. Sure, it should be a competitive game. But these guys, the Bengals, they never start the season well. They just don't. And I acknowledge that even when I chose them to beat the Patriots, and they still lost. I got to go with the Chiefs. I kind of have no choice here. I got to go with the Chiefs. Is there a world where Cincinnati can just completely erase the memory of Week 1? Yeah, there's a world where that could happen. I just don't think we're living in it. The last 3 games, you got Pittsburgh at Denver. Pittsburgh's defense is always going to be great. That's just what this whole organization is known for. Smash mouth football, great defense, TJ Watt wrecking games, even Alex Highsmith being a very good complementary edge rusher. Denver's got a rookie quarterback. Denver's limited. I'll take Pittsburgh. It's crazy because the Steelers being off to a 2-0 start is just hilarious. Like, is Mike Tomlin ever going to be below 500? We'll see as the season progresses. Now, Sunday Night Football is going to be the best game of the week. Maybe not from a score perspective or an actual quality of game perspective, we'll see. But as far as the game that I'm most excited to see, Sunday Night Football is it. The Houston Texans, who I think are going to make it to the AFC Championship game, a team that I'm super high on, very exciting to watch. CJ Stroud I have as my MVP this year, versus the team that I'm probably the most hyped about, or at least the most optimistic and excited and interested in, Chicago. I said Chicago and the offense was going to get better. I said Caleb Williams is going to get better. I said the defense looks good. The special teams looks good. I even have them making the playoffs. But I don't think they're ready for the Texans. Is that fair? I think that's fair, right? Do you have to be 2-0 to start the season to look good? Listen, if Caleb Williams looks good in this game, it's a win. In my book. If Caleb Williams has a better week 2 than he did week 1, it's a moral victory, even if they can't beat a team that is as good as the Texans are. But I am going to go with the Texans over Chicago. But let me tell you something. I would be so conflicted if Chicago wins in Houston. I won't know if I should pull back on the Texans a little bit or be really, really confident in my stock in the Bears. I will have no idea. I don't think that's going to happen though, so I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Houston. Monday Night Football is mildly interesting. I think this game is a kind of a defining game for both teams involved. You got Philadelphia hosting Atlanta. So here's the situation. Atlanta's offense looked awful. Absolutely awful against the Steelers. But that was a great defense. They're now going up against what could be one of the worst defenses in the NFL in Philadelphia. So maybe that gives Kirk Cousins and company a chance to open up the playbook a little bit more, have a little bit more time in the pocket, and I definitely think they'll play better offensively. I mean, it's hard to play worse than they did against Pittsburgh. Philadelphia needs to do better offensively and defensively as well. This is really going to define a couple of things. So, if Philadelphia wins and is able to hold back Atlanta's offense, it's going to mean two things. While their defense isn't good, it might not be horrendously bad. And it'll also mean that if Atlanta couldn't move the ball on the Eagles, then Atlanta's offense is horrendously bad. Also, Kirk Cousins in primetime, let's be real. If Atlanta wins this game, that would likely mean that they had to score a decent amount of points, which, I mean, red flags, massive red flags, panic buttons in Philadelphia with how bad that defense must be, if that ends up being the case. And maybe Atlanta will feel a little bit better about their week 1 loss and maybe feel like it was more of a mismatch than it was them just not being good. My prediction, Philadelphia will win this game. I think that it's not going to... I think that Atlanta won't look as bad offensively because of the porous defense of Philadelphia, but I still think Philadelphia will score more points ultimately than the Falcons. I'm going to go Philadelphia. All right. I would say that about does it for tonight's and today's video. Hope you guys are as excited for tonight's game as I am. I do think it's going to be a great game. Also, we'll see at the end of the year how I do with my predictions. But until then, that's it. Get the fuck out of here.